welcome back. I guess you just have been back, haven't you? I'm David Card, Research Director for Street Fight. You may have seen me this morning. One of the things that we discovered with our survey work was one of the key challenges was selling to national brands who market locally. So we're going to help you with that a little bit. So I've got a panel here today of national brands and an agency that works with national brands, and they're going to talk about how they do, or if they do, or what they do in terms of local marketing and what they're looking for and how they measure their success, maybe a little bit about that, and what they need from the supply chain out there, whether it's marketing technology or services or other agencies, that kind of stuff. So this should be good. This should be useful, I hope. So let's start just by having each of the panelists introduce themselves and very briefly describe what your company does. Maybe, yeah, just that sounds good. Do that.
Daniel Udell, brand manager for Whistlepig Rye, rye whiskey. So that's what we do. I work actually for the distributor, but as a brand manager. So sort of a hybrid role within the alcohol industry in sort of connecting marketing sales a little bit more streamlined.
And this is a very high-end brand of rye as well, so should be interesting to see how they think about what goes on locally. Rachel?
So I'm Rachel Pasqua. I work for MEC. We're a global media buying and planning organization. We're part of WPP's Group M. And I lead the Connected Life practice at MEC, which is strategy and product development, inclusive of all things mobile, all things beyond the desktop.
That's good. So definitely blue chip clients that you're dealing with.
Oh,
Some do a lot of local marketing, some maybe not so much or none at all. So we can talk about that a little bit. And Dipayan, tell us where you fit.
Dipayan Gupta, I head up the social media practice at New York Life. We are a big national brand, that's true, but the majority of our products, the vast majority, are sold through actual agents who are embedded in communities, who are making connections with people at a local level. And our real challenge is to try to create a national brand and have that be a foundation for local marketing efforts as well.
So why don't you riff off of that a little bit more and tell us about if you're a social media guy, is that in support of those agents, or is it primarily for doing something with the end customer, and then how do you connect the agents to that? Tell us a little bit about how that works.
That's a great question, and great. So I'm the first one to have to deal with this. We just launched a new brand, by the way. A new brand identity called Beacon of Life. And what we did when we thought about launching this new brand is to understand what are the needs of our agents, and then also what are the needs of the end client. And I think that's a distinction that needs to be thought about a lot, especially when you have a field force out there selling your products. You have your agents who are selling the products, they have their own needs, and then you have the end client. And how do you merge the worlds of sales materials and marketing materials? Because both of them have to really work in tandem. And social media is really a place where that begins to merge. What we try to do with our corporate social media presence is to try to create broad awareness. We always talk about insurance being kind of a low interest category to begin with. So it's a sort of place where even before you talk about your brand, you have to make people aware of the industry and the need behind the products that we're selling. So before you say you need to buy this now, you have to say, hey, you should really think about this sort of thing to secure your life. And that's where the corporate side of the business, the stuff that I do, ends up providing some air cover for our agents so that there's broad awareness and respect for the brand, so that we can then hand it off to our agents in the local communities to then make those connections with people and make a connection with basically someone who is kind of a stranger, and you're going into their house and talking to them about insurance and life and death, and to whatever extent we can create a halo effect around them so that they can then go in and have those conversations.
So it sounds like the corporate social media efforts, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, use all of those?
Yes.
And
also Snapchat.
Snapchat?
Yeah, we're
Snapchat,
there.
okay.
Life insurance company? You wouldn't have thought.
So that's not particularly localized, right? Your messaging is pretty standard across the country. It only becomes it's a local sale when the agent becomes involved. So take that, file that one away. That's one of the ways that national companies think about local marketing. Is not necessarily what they're creating, but what their channel is doing for them, right? Dan, is that a similar? Do you think about that in a similar fashion?
I mean, so especially being a liquor, a liquid, people within spirits drink differently throughout the year, and they drink differently given location. So for Whistlepig, it's 100 proof rye, entry level, $80 SRP. So very targeted consumer and who our consumer base is. But for instance, in Miami, they drink rye year round. They don't think of it as seasonally because it's always hot. Here in New York, we tend to drink dark spirits October, November, December. That's our big season. 70% of consumption happens in those 3 months. So local marketing is very important and very relevant, whether you have a drink strategy that you want to promote, some sort of experiential you want to amplify. It's going to be very specific to a given market, especially as a startup brand, as a smaller, not a Diageo or a Pernod Ricard of the world. So certainly are looking into very local efforts and local advertising, social pushes and things of that nature.
Interesting. And then the distribution chain is very complex in booze. So you're going straight to the end customer rather than the retailer or the distributor, right? You're not really marketing to distributors that much. Is that a fair?
Yes and no. As a small company, as a startup again, just to couch it in that understanding, you sort of liquor you sell to a distributor who then sells to a customer who then sells to your end consumer. It's called a 3-tier system, and it's a bit of a hangover, so to speak, from Prohibition days. And so there are many customers along the way to your final purchase. So as a smaller brand, social is a really effective tool because it's cost effective, one, but provides the reach and audience. But so we are ultimately marketing and advertising to the end consumer, the bar patron, the person at the liquor store, et cetera. But also we need to show the distributor that we're investing in gaining awareness among consumers so that they have the confidence to go out and sell it. Because typically distributorships have hundreds of thousands of brands under their portfolio. So they need to see that you are putting a marketing push and putting the effort behind it so that they have the confidence to go out and sell it and that they know you're growing and things of that. Basically, so they have confidence in selling your product.
Interesting. And then Rachel, you said you wanted to talk a little bit about dynamic localization. Did you want to go into that, or do you want?
I thought you were going to say something about the semantics of local.
Why don't you try actually do that?
Well,
let's start with
yeah,
that.
because,
What defines
location,
local in people's in big
it
brands?
It depends on who you're talking to,
Yep.
right? Because local matters to pretty much everyone, whether you're selling diamonds or cans of soup or tires. It's just a matter of how you use it. Are you using location data to define an audience, to understand consumer behaviors, to inform dynamic creative, to create some kind of in-aisle experience? So there are all these different shades of local. And it's the most commoditized thing. I mean, I could meet with a different potential publisher, partner, ad tech vendor every 15 minutes of my life and never meet the same people twice as most people on the buy side could. And everyone talks about data within the first or location data in the first 5 minutes, and everyone's got the greatest location data ever, and everyone's the best at everything, and it's such a commoditized thing. So I think first and foremost, like, what do you mean by local marketing? Now, you and I were talking about dynamic creative based on location, and I think that there's such an interest in the industry for dynamic creative or programmatic creative, whatever you want to call it, segmenting out different creative experiences in media based on data. And location data is the easiest way to do it. If you're Nike, you're going to show people, different. You're going to show them rain gear if there's a weather forecast in their area based on rain. If it's going to be, 86 degrees and sunny for the rest of the week, you're going to show them warm weather running gear. And that's the simplest execution of location and creative that I can think of.
The other thing was kind of interesting that when you quickly sketched out all the things that you could use location information for, audience definition, dynamic creative, a certain kind of promotion that might be going on in the channel.
Kind of
Is there
proximity.
is there a way to, it probably isn't, but is there a way to characterize types of companies that are most interested in A, B, and C? I say, what do packaged goods
Yeah.
companies care about location
Yeah, well, I
versus
think-
what do car dealers or car headquarters
That's
versus
tough. I think they're-
Nike?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds too simple to say they'll all be interested in it to a certain degree. Like, maybe if you're a global luxury brand like, say, Tiffany, you're probably primarily, and this is just an example, not to say that, but just as an example, you're probably more interested in location data as in terms of defining your audience. Where have they been? Do I know someone? If someone's been to Harry Winston, chances are there's a good chance that they're in the market for some sort of luxurious jewelry. But it's not to say that a brand like that wouldn't be interested in creating some kind of location-based experience in the store as well. They might be interested in localizing the language on their website or within their app based on someone being in the store. They might be interested in creating some sort of beacon-generated dynamic in-store display experience. Or you take another brand, Campbell's is another one of our clients. If you're trying to sell soup, you will be equally interested in using location data to determine who your audience is. If you see someone like me show up at a school, a ballet studio, a karate studio, and the supermarket 4 or 5 times a week, you're going to assume I'm a household decision-making mother of 2, and you're going to put me in the soup buying category. And so, great example of use of location to determine who somebody is. But you might be just as likely to want to engage me through an app like, I don't know, Ibotta or Shopkick or something when I walk into the store to get me more interested in or incentivize me to go scan a can of soup. So I think all of the different aforementioned, shades of location matter no matter what you're selling,
Okay,
diamonds or soup.
That's the takeaway then,
It's
right?
just a matter of what are your near-term priorities and how easily could you execute, because it might be easier, maybe not, it might be easier if you're a CPG brand to do that kind of in-store, at-shelf experience than if you're a single brand luxury retailer and you've got to really think about how are you going to change your in-store environment.
So
But
that's a
again,
good
just examples, by the way.
That's a good takeaway though too, I think.
Two
is-
very vastly
Yeah.
different brands, soup to diamonds.
Right, and yet it feels like these big national brands and marketers are gonna have different objectives when they're thinking about local, whatever it means to them, because they might be using it for audience definition, or they might be using it for couponing, or they might be using it for in-store experiences. So that's one of the first things I suppose you have to find out if you're trying to sell to people like that. Another thing we found in our survey work with national brands is that they're actually very comfortable with traditional media still and find it highly effective, which may be a shock to a bunch of digital tech heads and marketing types in the audience, but maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So
What do you do? How do you still
Yeah,
find
people-
value in print and television?
people still watch TV. I mean, who doesn't watch? Everyone has watched TV in some form or the other in the past week, right? Whether it's over the internet or not. It's still one of the broadest mediums to capture people. When you launch a new brand identity, when you're trying to establish yourself and create some awareness, it's still the best place to play. Having said that, even traditional media has gotten smarter, right? So with the advent of CRMs and DMPs, data management platforms, and a lot of other traditional media houses are now fitting into that. I mean, you can't have a conversation with something like a Meredith or another publisher without also having a conversation about, okay, so what data are we getting from this? How can we extract some intelligence from this for the next touch point in the process? And this is where I think location is really just a microcosm of a larger question, which is how can we match precision with how can we match precise targeting with personalized content? So how can we figure out where the person is, whether it's a location being the main metric or age or marital status or whatever it might be, and then matching it with the same content. For a very long time, what we did was we had a broad general message, and then, with cookies and pixels and all this stuff, we would take that broad message and send it to the demographics we think are the most appropriate. But it was still a broad message, and it was still the same thing to someone whether they were married or not married, whether they were male or female, just because they fit into the general categories that we were looking into. I think the challenge now is that since we can reach out to people in such a precise fashion, we have to make sure that the content we reach out to them with is personalized as well. In some cases, location is very important. If you're looking for, these are terrible ideas, I'm just making these up off the top of my head. If you're looking to find someone to carpool with, right, to take your kids to school, location is very important. If you're looking to buy something from someone or seek advice from someone, yeah, your neighbor next door may technically be listed in this registry or whatever, but you probably want to actually say, hey, okay, so I want someone nearby, but I also want someone who matches a certain profile, who maybe has a similar background to me. Maybe they're within my larger LinkedIn network or something. So there are times when location is very important. There are times when it's that plus some other factors as well.
I'm going to force you to shift a little bit because we did talk before about YouTube. So New York Life uses television and uses YouTube as well. Is there, first of all, do you use them for different things? And is there a local component to YouTube? I don't know, is there?
I don't know if there's a local component to YouTube, but I think that and I could be completely wrong, but I do think that YouTube should be thought of as more than just a video distribution platform. It is the largest, well, I hope I'm not making up facts, but the largest search engine after Google search. So after people put things into Google search, the second place where people go in and search for things like how to do this or what should I or whatever is YouTube. This is where people are searching for stuff. And to whatever extent you can leverage that intelligence and then provide them with the content to match their needs, I think that's where YouTube really comes in. And whether that's creating content on your own for your YouTube channel or working with influencers, that is, I think, where YouTube occupies a really interesting place. Previously, I think it was just a place where people housed whatever commercials they were running on TV, but I think it's evolving into something else now.
You could get kind of metaphorical about what is location. If you think of YouTube as a location, it's a destination. You're not at this lat long, but you're at YouTube. That's where you're going to reach, really strong segments. You're going to reach young men who are interested in gaming. You're going to reach young girls who are going to, go there to watch shopping haul videos. So if you're selling makeup, if you're selling console games, there are certain audiences that you have a very high likelihood to reach, higher than probably broadcast TV. It's not to say people aren't watching TV. Obviously, clearly they are, but the time they're spending on YouTube, much higher for certain demographics. So if you think about it as a metaphorical location, it's not a real world location, but it's a location in the digital world.
That's a really good point, though, especially with YouTube, is who are you targeting? And especially for Gen Z, YouTube is huge. This whole unboxing phenomenon and all of these, people are making a living out of it. But it's true, it's crazy. But again, obviously as a looker, I'm not looking to Gen Z yet. But if you were Fisher Price or something that in that realm, I think it's a super relevant platform vis-a-vis, I don't know if you were a deli or something, you know what I mean? It's kind of about the generation you're going after.
If I were your agency, my first thought might be oh, My Drunk Kitchen on YouTube, as opposed to,
right.
A national TV commercial. Not that it's an either or, but.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing on kind of what you were talking about earlier is, I think in terms of national being still very comfortable with traditional, I think that they're overwhelmingly comfortable with traditional media. And honestly, in my experience at Campari and some other places, there wasn't a ton of intelligence or knowledge on tech and on social. They know you need to be there. They don't necessarily know how to be there or how to be there most effectively. They just sort of know this Facebook thing or this Twitter. Typically the people making decisions. So where I see a huge benefit for any agency going in is kind of one, connecting the dots between traditional and social and see how they can work together. Because I think we take for granted, being in a certain space that everyone knows the most advantageous way to use Twitter vis-a-vis Instagram and Facebook. And to be honest, at least in many of the companies, that information is not readily known, and it's a little bit scary, to be honest. People that have gone through marketing in their careers, they feel comfortable with, you can buy a print ad, you can buy TV spots, and they know how that works. And social and digital is a little bit scary. At least that's what I've seen at bigger companies.
I think you're right about complexity. And the people who buy TV from Group M would probably disagree that TV is easier, but in a lot of ways, TV is easier than digital.
Yeah. And they've worked
Has anybody found, in your experiences, the panelists, have you found any way of doing that dot connecting or comparing metrics? Are there social media metrics that can be translated into things that television or print buyers are used to, or is that still a really hard thing to do and handcraft?
So speaking of unboxing things, I think there's like a lot to unbox over there. So first of all, social and digital, for that matter, is a very different thing. I mean, think about it. Think about watching like an MTV music video from like the 80s or the 90s, right? You would have to watch that damn channel all day and wait for the video to come back again, right? You couldn't search for it. You're like, I hope it comes on again so I can see it again, and then maybe I'll press my VCR and record it. Social, you don't have to do that. You can search for the video, you can search for it, you can share it with your friends. So social isn't just a one-to-many push, it is, right? But you're also hearing back from people, and you're also seeing how people are sharing things. So you have to make sure your metrics capture not only the views and the impressions that things are getting, but also what is happening with that piece of media that's out there. How are people talking about it? How are they sharing it? But at the same time, the other side of the coin is that a lot of social media platforms are now debuting ad types that are very, very relatable to standard digital advertising. There's lots of pre-roll and mid-roll on Twitter, for instance, you can buy. And I think that's a point where standard digital advertising, which I guess is kind of traditional now, and social really start to merge, and you start to have these conversations where, okay, do I do a pre-roll with ESPN on their website, or do I do it on whatever they're live tweeting? Where would my money be better spent? And that's where you start seeing, in certain cases, metrics for digital advertising coming very much in line with the metrics for social media advertising.
Again, these guys, doesn't it feel very national, though? Well, television is national. I mean, well, there's plenty of local TV.
Local television.
But your primary distinction in your mind, it feels, see if I'm translating this properly, is that YouTube is kind of an on-demand and potentially shareable experience. Plus, you also alluded to the influencers, which is kind of interesting. So the programming is a bit different. But that's what's different than broadcast TV right now, at least.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is an on-demand thing, but you still have to, I think, run TrueView advertising or something in order for people to interact with your stuff. And also, apart from advertising, I think that we should also talk about PR a bit and the role of public relations. I went to this ANA's conference this past year in Colorado. I think American Greetings had a really interesting presentation, and they and a bunch of other companies over there talked about how virality isn't something that just happens, right? And it isn't something that you just can throw ad money behind either. They really, some of these companies took a long time to study, okay, where does it start from? Where are the publishers, whether it's, I don't know, Gothamist or some other site, where most of these viral trends emerge, and then really working on creating a relationship with these publishers so that when you debut your new commercial, your new whatever it might be, that they put it on their sites, and it kind of starts going from there. So yes, there's location is important, ad dollars behind things is important, but I think that your relationship with whether it's a local publisher or a national publisher is very important as well, depending on your market.
Interesting. So let's pull back a little bit. I'm going to tee up some questions from the audience in a minute or so, but let's talk a bit about, let's bring it local again, because that's the theme here. What do you look for? How can some of these companies out here help you the most? What could they show you that says that they're going to align with what you are thinking you're going to need for your campaign?
I mean, for me, if you're going to dial down, really the advantage is that as we're looking on a national scale, you don't have the advantage to drill down into each market and get a full understanding of that market. And really that's where we would look to outsource that knowledge, I guess, is you know, the agency's knowledge of a given market that we're targeting is really what we would be looking to bring on, because we don't necessarily have the time to know each market individually. And for us, it's drink trends and, you know, key bartenders and key accounts and, you know, what accounts are best for PR and all these things. And we can know a little bit, but not enough. So I mean, at a very basic sense, it'd be just that knowledge of a given market.
You had talked, I think, a bit about using one of your key uses of social media was to do market research on that kind of those kinds of questions.
Yeah,
So-
it was kind of a cool way to get some consumer research. Obviously, at the stage of the brand where we're at, we don't really have the funding to go out and do a huge consumer research. Also, we don't have enough share of market, being a startup, sort of 6 years, but we don't have enough share of market to get quality information. So what we did is we actually used social as a way to get an idea of who our consumer is. Obviously not an exact science by any stretch of the imagination, but we had an agency that went in and identified 50 to 70 key influencers within various verticals. So whether it be food, drink, fashion, lifestyle, sports, etc. And we engaged with them and gave them some product, and they posted some engaging content on Instagram. And based on the engagement rates that we got a better understanding of who reacts best in that given vertical. And those were sort of helped to shape a little bit of our understanding of who our key consumer is. And some stuff was surprising, some not. But yeah, a pretty interesting way to use social.
So Depayan, if some of these local tech or marketing tech guys were talking to you, what would you? How can they align with your needs best? You had talked a lot about, I think, that customer, identifying particular customers or having a particular customer profile.
Right. I guess the conversation would start from what are we not asking, and you guys helping us understand what questions we're not asking when it comes to local marketing. Our products are very much based on the lives that people are living, right? Where when you have your first kid, when you buy a house, when you get married, and everyone's talking about this, whether it's locally or in social media or whatever it might be, how could we best identify people who are having those life stages, and then how do we best talk to them? It changes on a local level, not only culturally, but also, I mean, think about it, the rent that most of us pay here in New York, you could buy a palace somewhere. You know, it's a very different lifestyle based on your locality, you know, so you can't just use broad strokes and say income level and demographic stuff like that. Really need to understand the markets to be able to serve people with what they actually need.
And as an agency that's dealing with diverse customer
Yeah.
base,
Wait,
what?
who am I talking to again?
So if you're talking
talking
to a
brands?
marketing tech company that's got a location angle, and you said you're talking to thousands of them, and
so
everybody
you're
does.
like not a brand that wants to sell to a national retailer, but you're some sort of location ad
Yeah,
tech
how can
company?
they help you? What can they tell you that would help
The
you?
most important thing I think is to have a really clear, succinct elevator pitch, because again, I get pitched constantly. People on the buy side get pitched just all the live long day, and most people it takes about 15 to 20 minutes of conversation to figure out what the heck they do. You know, some people are better explaining than others, but a really succinct 2-3 sentence declaration of your value proposition. You're a premium publisher, direct, hyperlocal ad network. You're a beacon platform that specializes in in-aisle, you know, store traffic, foot traffic measurement. Like, just tell me what you do very clearly so we can spend the rest of the conversation talking about what we could do together.
It's a complex ecosystem, so
That's
it
hard
sounds
though,
like good,
you know.
good.
Differentiating yourself is hard.
Yeah,
and-
good. Any questions from the audience? I'm looking on. There seems to be one in the back. Can we get a mic, or else I'll repeat it if you just want to scream out. Oh, there's a mic.
Hi, playing off that, aside from sort of budgets or minimums, what do you, can you talk about the opportunity cost of working with new vendors, partners, technologies, et cetera?
Was that a question for me?
For all three of you, for the time that you spend, the opportunity cost of just onboarding a new partner versus putting money into a channel or tech partner that you work with already?
Personally, for me, I don't think it's something that you can really quantify that way. The first question I always get when I try to present something new to a client, almost without exception, is, well, how many people can I reach? And I continually say, it's not a reach and frequency thing. If it was a reach and frequency thing, then everybody would be doing it, and it wouldn't be innovation, and it wouldn't be new. And if you're going to do something really unique, and if you're going to be the first in your category to do it, I think that the benefit of that can't be measured monetarily.
Is it, Deepayan, is there a way you think about that? It's like if somebody was pitching you something, how much effort you would put in or not put in
I think
to
that
adopt it?
The thing is that when you're pitching a big brand, you have to understand that we also have a complex procurement process we have to go through, which is often, I think, frustrating for startup technologies. But that is kind of how it is. It's kind of incumbent on us to make sure that we've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, seen all the other competitors in the space. So just understanding that there's a time, frame that we have to work within, I think would be good to know from the start, and to also know that. Rachel, you talked a lot about being succinct and being precise in what your value is. I would say, really tell us what's different, right? Because everyone says, well, we're the best at social listening, but that's a word that everyone uses. What is different about you? I think that is, okay. You guys all know who your competitors are. You've probably done a lot of research on your competitors. Tell us what makes you stand out, makes you different from the other guy.
All right, slag off the competition. That's the takeaway here. All right, well, thanks. I think that's probably all the time we've got, so we'll get back on schedule here. But give these guys a round of applause. Thanks for your advice.
Thank you.